Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel. After the worst technical difficulties I've probably ever, experienced, out of nowhere, this letting us go live. I had to create a whole new stream and all sorts. And we have this kind of a panel on. I do massively apologize, everyone that jumped over from the old link to this link. Really do appreciate it. But of course, I am not here by myself as we do talk about Chelsea 2, to discuss what we really learned. I am joined by my man himself, of course, Mr. Carefree Lewis. G, bro, how you doing?
Still hanging off the Royal Rumble, but we're here. Tuchel's Blues are still undefeated. I'm in a good mood, even though my voice and my facial expressions don't show it. I'm just still waking up. But big up everyone who's locked in with us. Come on.
Exactly. Then I'm also joined by Mr. J. McIntosh, who, of course, has been around a couple times. But, I thought I enjoyed his company. So I might get the guy back. Also, he knows what he's talking about. Last time out, we found out that he's a genius. So, of course, you need geniuses on your channel. So that's why you're back. Jay, how you doing?
Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you. Very humbling. Yeah, I'm excited to be back, man. It's nice to meet the two lads as well. I've not spoken to them before. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, bro. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And of course, also a new guest today, sadly without a face cam for just privacy reasons. We are joined by Mr. PYS. I was going to call him Piz, but apparently he doesn't like that. So I'm going to call him PYS then instead. Fair enough. Whenever I read his name on Twitter, I thought, yeah, that's Piz. But okay, PYS it is. PYS it is, first of all, man. How you doing? And secondly, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the discussion. Yeah, should be good. Get it on.
Exactly. Exactly. Of course, all of the links to these guys are down in the description below. Jay's Twitter, to the Chelsea Social, PYS's Twitter, and of course Lewis's channel. And actually his Twitter is linked, but just type in his name, like you'll find it. Exactly. And of course, if you're new here, please be sure to subscribe. That'd be brilliant. And something new that I quickly want to announce: we do now have a membership option on this channel. So beneath the video, there should be a join button somewhere, so you can join that. And there's then 3 different levels of tiers of members or whatever. Like the one just like make sure you are like highlighted in the comments every time, and I make sure to read out your questions and your statements every time. But then there's ones where you can get on a stream, once a month. And then there's even another one where you can jump on basically however many streams you want and for the whole stream as well. So if you want to get involved with that, do that. Of course, you don't have to. But enough of that. Let's talk about football. Let's talk about Chelsea 2, Burnley 0. And okay, it wasn't exactly Sheffield against United against Sheffield United before the season when I was just running around here thinking we were going to win the league. But it was still bloody good. It was still bloody good. And I had a good time. We finally scored our first 2 goals under Thomas Tuchel. We finally got our first win under Thomas Tuchel. And honestly, I can't really be complaining about anything. So, guys, I'm going to just start with you, PYS, because, you haven't been around before. Just quickly, your general thoughts on the game.
You know what? I thought it was pretty good. I think the overall score could have been much higher. I think, we created more chances, obviously, than the 0-0 draw against Wolves. So, although 3 at the back long term isn't what I really want to see, I think, he's making a 3 at the back look quite exciting at the moment. So, I'm looking forward to Spurs, obviously. Early days yet with Tuchel, but, first 2 games look promising. So, I think, we can take the positives from these 2 games, bring them forward. Obviously, Spurs is our real sort of big test under him, first big game, you could say. But I think the early signs are positive, and I think, obviously, one of the main reasons, obviously, every fan is excited at the moment is Hudson-Odoi starting a lot of games. So I think everyone's really excited about him, and obviously he's playing like a wing-back role, but getting up the pitch a lot and doing defensive duties, which people said he couldn't do. So I'm really excited for him, and I think the development of a lot of the players will be very high under Tuchel. So early signs are promising for me, yeah.
I agree. I honestly couldn't agree more. I think there have been a lot of very positive signs so far. And there are, of course, you picked out Callum Hudson-Odoi. There are a couple of others that, I want to pick out and I want to highlight just because I was so happy with them. Of course, we'll speak about every performance probably anyway at the end of the day. But I wanted to highlight Mason Mount, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Jorginho, and Mateo Kovacic, because especially the latter 2, we probably didn't expect to be playing as well as they at least have yesterday. Obviously, Mason Mount, there was a lot of questions, will he thrive under Thomas Tuchel? Will he even get picked, this and that? And then he was left out of the Wolves game. And, certain people with certain agendas were like, see, that's it, he's in the mud, proper managers don't pick him. And then he turns up, and alongside Hudson-Odoi, in my opinion, was the man of the match yesterday. So I was very pleased with that. And yeah, like you said, Hudson-Odoi in a different role. although not proper right wing back. Let's be honest, it's more like a right mid. But still officially it is a right wing back role, and he's thriving in it. 2 performances under 2 games under Thomas Tuchel, 2 man of the matches for him. You can't really be asking for much more than that. And Jay, what about yourself? Just a quick summary of the game, before we get into more detail, I guess.
Yeah, good. I thought the first half was decent, but a little frustrating. The second half was a lot more comfortable. Not that we weren't comfortable in the first half, but I thought it was interesting that Burnley decided to press ever so slightly and to put a bit of pressure on and to be a bit more, outgoing, should we say. I thought that was interesting. I quite like seeing it from Burnley because they are normally not too fun to watch. Jorginho, Kovacic, all right. It's nice to see Hudson-Odoi playing a lot. 2-0 win. I mean, it's to be expected. As PY said, the big game is on Thursday against Spurs. So, we'll see what's going on there. Obviously, they won't have Harry Kane, I'm sure, but overall signs positive. I like the speed. I like the fact that we look technically fluid. The formation seems to be working well with players in the squad. I like the fact that we're seeing Tuchel experiment and use different players and operate a slightly different system. And I think actually majority of the perhaps more experienced players are really quite comfortable. I felt sorry for Tammy that he didn't have the game I was hoping him to have, but I think that's to be expected sometimes under new management and a slightly different change of formation and what's going on. But overall positive signs for sure, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just everyone's kind of playing well. The only issues we've had is our strikers haven't played well, whether it was Drew against Wolves, Tammy yesterday, or Timo Werner yesterday. None of those 3 have looked any good at all, quite frankly, which is very depressing and very disappointing. But Lewis, quickly, of course, I've spoken to you quickly after the game yesterday as well, but just quickly summarize for me what you made of the game, and in particular, just sticking with the 3 at the back. Do you think that we'll keep doing that? And if so, of course, we'll get to Marcus Alonso. I'm not 100% sure on PYS's and Jay's opinions on Marcus, but, people know ours. So, what did you make of the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was progress to me for the most part. Like, I don't want to get too overhyped and gassed about everything because that's exactly what we did 2 or 3 months ago, which is why I'm trying to be a bit more level heads about it. But there's only positives that you can take out of most of it, except our playing the attacking third. If we're going to nitpick anything that does still need a bit of more improvement, it's that final ball, it's our players' movement inside the box and that connection with the ball as well, because that's what I think we're lacking. But other than that, for the most part, I thought we're excellent. Burnley, I mean, they just sat back and came for the point, same way Wolves did, but the difference is we were able to break them down a bit more initially through Marcus Alonso and Azpilicueta. Callum Hudson-Odoi had a second man of the match performance in a row, and Kovacic looks back to his best again, which I never really thought was completely dusted, but it was dusted as long as we were playing the same system Frank Lampard was using, which is why under a new manager, if they can get the best out of both of them and play to their strengths, you still have an amazing pivot there. And this formation, the results are to show for it. But I can only take it with a pinch of salt because we've only played 2 of the same types of teams. Wolves came here to sit deep and try and get a point. Burnley came here to sit deep and try and get a point. Spurs are going to do the same thing. They're going to sit deep and try and get a point. In our next few games, Sheffield United, Newcastle, I don't have to put money on it. I can guess how they're going to play. They're just going to come and try and get a point too. So we have a good run of games to build confidence in. And there's nothing against that, especially if we can get a result against Spurs too. That's the first top 6 team that we've beaten this season. And that will count for something too, because we're talking about confidence. The more we keep the streak of flopping against the teams above us, the more that's going to hang above our heads. So if we can end that early, perfect way to start Thomas Tuchel's reign. But same way, pinch of salt. I'm happy with the way we're going. I'm going to wait until that week period where we have Southampton away, Atletico away, and Man United at home. We get past that area, hell, even throw the Everton and Leeds games in straight after that. That's when we can really start to be serious. But let's just enjoy the ride for as long as it is. Right now, we're doing well. Everyone's been a lot more positive than I've seen people in weeks. So let's just ride the wave. Let's see where it takes us. I still think everything's up for grabs this season anyway. Like I've said, the way this fixture list is, the way the levels of consistency have been all over the place this season, consistency will take you so far. Like a win against Spurs on Thursday will take us back into the top 5, I think. I'm not sure if results go away or if they don't, whether we'll be back into the top 5 or not. But that's just to show how big things can change in the Premier League, depending on how many games you can start winning and how you can go on a winning run. So build on it. That's all I can say. If we go through our next 5 games and we end up within the top 4 again or even higher up than that, yes, like we've only faced a certain sort of team, the same way we would have won 4 or 5 games on the bounce. That will account for so much in the Premier League table, especially going into the end of the season. So I'm positive, but I'm just going to take it a game at a time still.
Yeah, no, I honestly couldn't agree more. I think, we need to take a game at a time. We need to just start to push forward. We need to take the small positives when they are there. And there have certainly been a lot of small positives. And you touched on one, which is why I kind of want to start this more in-depth conversation. And that's Jovic, whatever you want to call them. Our, for the time being, double pivot, of course, N'Golo Kante was back fit, but didn't even feature in the end, was only on the bench. So for a second time in a row, we saw these two guys turn up. Don't know why it's playing it like that. It was meant to show us next to us, but apparently not. All right, let's go like that then. Anyway, Mateo Kovacic and Jorginho as a double pivot. Obviously it's a little bit different because we haven't exactly seen them being supported by a back three behind them, which might make them, a bit more comfortable defensively and look a bit better, and also them makes it a lot easier for them to play it out, which, makes sense. I saw an interesting stat, by the way, against Wolves. They already had positive, stats, I guess, in their progressive passing as well, but it wasn't with the very highest, numbers of the best Premier League players, which have 30 to 35% forward passes. They had around 20 against Wolves, but against Burnley, that actually increased to around 30% for both of them, which I thought was very visible on the pitch. Both of them seemed to be more, just more proactive, more daring, more trying to move forward, both in different ways. Jorginho was especially looking for Mason Mount, and while Mateo Kovacic was especially trying to look to the switch ball for Callum Hudson-Odoi out wide on the right. But what do you guys make of this whole Mateo Kovacic, Jorginho situation? And, we do presume that N'Golo Kante will come back into the side and replace one of them. But the question is, who will he replace? Of course, Lewis and myself have touched on this previously, but it's a difficult one because, to be honest, with how they're playing right now, you're not even 100% sure whether either of them should be replaced, quite frankly. But with how Tuchel spoke about N'Golo Kante, when arriving and saying, I've tried to get Kante to PSG for so many years, and now I'm finally, able to coach him and have him as my player. It doesn't exactly sound like he will leave him on the bench for anybody, kind of thing. So that's what I want to get to. And let me start with Jay first. What did you first of all make of their performance, those two guys? And what do you think, how will Kante come into there, and how will that make sense?
Yeah, they're decent, man. I mean, I get really frustrated with both of them, to be honest, when I'm watching. And I think a lot of fans do. Obviously, a lot of fans do. I think that boils down to a bigger sort of club cultural issue. And there are things I'd like to touch on quite a lot. The fact that I'd say post 2003, give or take maybe the odd few managers, the fans and the sort of fabric of the way Chelsea plays, even if we use a midfield two like Matic and Fabregas, there tends to be one destroyer and then a really progressive passer who consistently plays balls in behind. And with Jorginho, I think the frustration comes, for me at least, is I don't see him using his forward passing ability as often as I'd like to. And against Burnley, who aren't the strongest side and are not a ball dominant side at all, I kind of expect his passing to be outstanding. I expect his passing to be outstanding consistently, but I don't want to knock them. I think they're really good. I like Kovacic more so as a player than Jorginho, although I think Jorginho has class attributes. But again, with Kovacic, he frustrates me this season more so than last because he's excellent at breaking the press. But then I've struggled to see this season where that final bit of quality comes at the end with the right pass into the channels or laying the ball off to the correct player instead of looking a bit bewildered and a bit lost. But against Burnley, yeah, they're really good. They controlled the game. Jorginho's metronomic in a way, just keeps things going. And we touched on last time, I think, on this channel, we were talking about Tuchel's training methods, about cutting off the areas near the corners. So that means you obviously have to stretch the play and try and solve problems. And obviously with Jorginho and Kovacic, you can facilitate moving the ball from side to side as well as transitioning it forward and backwards at pace. And that allows you to sort of break through the lines or figure out opposition teams. So they were functional. I think they've done their job. They were solid. Burnley put a bit of pressure on, but not too much. I know Hajir wasn't very happy when we were streaming about them at all, but I thought they were okay. I just think it'll be interesting when we play an intense team that play a high press, or a Liverpool or a City, to see how those guys do, whether they can dictate play as easy as they can against Burnley. And if they can do, then fair play. But sometimes I'm not too convinced that that'll necessarily play out. But yeah, they're decent. And Kante, I think Kante comes in. I don't know who he comes in for, to be honest with you. I think preferably I'd like it next to Kovacic, but I think it'll maybe be Jorginho more so, just for the way that their attributes maybe bounce off each other better. They might complement each other more so, but I'm not entirely sure, man. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's why I agree with it, because the way that Tuchel has used it so far and the way he's used Jorginho, I think Kante is closer to Kovacic than Kante is to Jorginho in the type of player that they are. I'm not saying they're the same, but I'm saying closer in terms of style of player that they represent on the pitch. Hence why I can't really see Kovacic and Kante being a regular pivot that he uses. In a 3, they might well play together. But in a 2, I'm not sure Tuchel will. But then, hey, I also didn't expect him to go 3 at the back, to be honest. At least not this early on, not against Burnley especially. I mean, he did say, I think before the game, that it was only a decision made the day before that they would go 3 at the back again, rather than, changing it up, which I personally like a lot, because it told me that this is not the only thing that they're doing, right? It's not like, we have the system, that's what we're going to do. And I know I said this before under Frank, I want him to find a system that works. And I do. But I didn't say that about Frank from the first game. So eventually, if Tuchel does find a game that we win every game with, he said this himself, of course I'm not going to change it anymore. But if he thinks we had certain issues with this, and then we play a different opponent where we will have issues with a certain formation, and yeah, change it up. And even though I said stick to a formation, and I said it like that and I didn't clarify it, I was more thinking about a system and the ideal of play, which with Frank always changed quite drastically when we changed formation. When we played a 4-3-3, we were a completely different team, way more attacker, way more aggressive than we were when we played a 3 at the back, which under Frank and Conte, that's all the same, was more of a 5 at the back, which meant we go from an attacking team to a rather defensive counter-attacking team. And whether Tuchel changes formation or not, he won't change the idea. Obviously, some tweaks will be done whether we play a much better team or a much worse team. But in general, that will be the case. And, let me get to PIS quick. PIS. See, I'm struggling with this, mate. I'm struggling with this. But anyways, what did you make of Jorginho and Kovacic? And generally, I do follow you on Twitter, obviously, but I can't exactly see every tweet that you make. So I'm not 100% sure on all of your opinions on this situation. But yeah, let me just ask you to summarize, the situation, I guess.
Well, I think, as many people know, I'm one of Kovacic's biggest fans. So personally, for me, I think he's a really, really good player. And I think there's a bit of a myth at the moment that is behind all this. Kovacic doesn't progressive play. He's not doing any progressive passes. I can sort of see that under Lampard a bit. He was passing sideways a bit too much. But the first 2 games under Tuchel, he's actually made a lot of progressive passes. And I think he has to start for me, whether in a midfield 2. So I think he's one of my starters. But if you're asking me more towards the Spurs game, if Kante's fit, then probably from a personal standpoint, Kante, Kovacic. But I can see like the point you've mentioned about like obviously they're quite similar. You may need Jorginho to play because it's a better balance, a better mix between the attributes. So to be honest, I don't mind either. Jorginho is good on the ball. He can play some very nice passes. But for me, Jorginho, the issue is just he's too slow. He can't get around the pitch. So I think I don't like the matchup against Spurs' midfield, like Ndombele versus Jorginho and Kante. So I don't know. It's a bit of a sticky one for me because I think we're going to stick with the 3 at the back. So I mean, one thing I would be open to actually. I don't know what you guys think, but if Kante isn't fit, maybe let's try Mount and Kovacic in a 2 because you've seen for England that Mount can actually do his defensive attributes well, and I think he's a player that can be sort of tactically moulded. I think he can play that sort of role just in the middle. So I'd like to experiment with that if Kante isn't fit. But if Kante is fit, then I'd definitely start Kante in one of the 2 spots, and then the other spot is just up for grabs. Whatever you think is probably best for the balance. I think it's up for debate really. So yeah, for the meantime, Jorginho and Kovacic are doing good, but I think against better teams with faster midfields, they're going to get overrun. So I think that's where Kante comes into play and will do good business. I think he's going to do really well under Tuchel if we can keep him fit because obviously he suits the high intensity system. So yeah, I think he'll be a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. I definitely do agree with that. I'm not sure on the Mount Kovacic thing, because I know we did it a couple of times on a Frank, but I still think, especially in big games, they're again very similar. I think Mount and Kovacic are even more similar. Other than obviously the final product, Mount has it more than Kovacic does. I don't know. I mean, people might disagree with that, but Lewis, what are your thoughts, especially on to what PYS said as well?
I'm interested to see how we work with who's going to be the starting two out of Kante, Kovacic, and Jorginho, because that is a question that we've asked for a long period of time. I do agree with what Pi said about how Kovacic does get given a bad name for people saying that he doesn't progress to play. And me personally, I was saying that, and this was only for the space of one game, but for that the Burnley game, I thought his final pass was off in that game anyway. That happened a numerous amount of times, and that's not to say he can't do it, because I definitely don't think he can't. I definitely don't think that's the case. He definitely can do it. It's just there are plenty of moments where I have been frustrated with Kovacic's final ball, and that's just him as a player. I won't speak on anything he does in the middle of the park because he's ridiculous as a midfielder. I'm only saying the only thing that takes him from being a very good midfielder to a world-class midfielder is that final ball. If he can time that perfectly and get a bit better accuracy on it, that's the difference between putting him in the very good section and next to the genuine best in the league. That's all I need to see from him. Kante, Kovacic, or Jorginho to start though. I echo similar things to what you were saying, Laurenz, where I think Kante and Kovacic are just too similar for my liking. If Thomas Tuchel can find a way to make them work together, I do think that would be my preferred option. But I think if you get the both of them, you miss Jorginho's passes in between the lines, which is out of the three, I think it's the only thing that Jorginho has over the other two. And when it's a pair of them as well, I already said they're both ball progressors by nature, which means, in my opinion, they're both always going to leave spaces in behind. If they're both doing the exact same thing, that's going to come against us when we're getting transitioned and the opposition's trying to hit us on the counter-attack. So for me, my personal preference would be Jorginho and Kante. I don't see Kante getting dropped. But same way, with the amount of games that we have going towards the end of the season, who's to even say that we have a consistent back two that we stick with for a pivot? There could be plenty of rotations. You could see Mason Mount come in there. You could see Billy Gilmour, Kovacic, Kante, Jorginho. That's fine.
Let me just interject quick. Maru1 in the comments. I appreciate your thoughts, but if you're going to spam, I have to put you in a timeout. So don't spam, because we will see it, but spamming is just annoying. So please don't do that. Sorry. Continue, Lewis.
No, I mean, that was basically the end of my point anyway. But yeah, I prefer Kante and Jorginho, but there are plenty of different options. And I also think three at the back might not necessarily be the formation that we stick with anyway, because it's way too early to tell when we face two very similar sides. So it makes sense that you kind of go there with similar tactics for the game as well. I'm waiting until the Southampton and when we finish the Leeds game, then I'll have a better understanding of what formation we're going to look to prefer. But right now, jury's out, man. It could be still 4 at the back in a few weeks. We'll never know.
That's the thing. And, you made a good point there with we never know who will even be the double pivot, because from my perspective, if we play a 3 at the back, I wouldn't even play Kante because I don't see the point personally, because he doesn't give us enough going forward in the progressive passing. And with the dribbling, he's not as good as Kovacic. In the control, he's not as good as Jorginho. And we have the defensive, let's say, solidity behind them in the back 3 anyway. So unless we go to a 4, with maybe an exception against the likes of Liverpool, Man City, that's different. But let's say the average game, right? Then I would say if we're going to play a back 3, I wouldn't even play Kante. Maybe that's just me, because I think it makes more sense in a 6, but then not in a 6, in a midfield 3. But then there's also the issue that Thomas Tuchel went out, and in his press conference said that he sees N'Golo Kante best in a double 6. And that is true. That I probably agree with this. It's just I don't agree with him in a double 6 with a back 3 behind him, which would suggest we kind of have to use a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2-2-2 or a 4-4-2. So maybe that limits us in that aspect as well, because I don't know. I just think, obviously, I kind of agree with what Lewis said on the whole Kovacic thing, and sorry, Pi, to kind of not. It's not even slander in my opinion at all. It's just he sometimes. What's frustrating to me with Kovacic is that he's so good, but doesn't do enough with it. It's all well and good dribbling as well as he does. It's all well and good being as press resistant as he is, but he makes so many yards and makes so much space. But then he does and doesn't do anything with it, barely ever. Yes, and he did have more progressive passing against Burnley, but still didn't create chances. He actually created more chances against Wolves to put Werner through. Or was that even against Wolves? Was that against Luton? It might have been against Luton. I can't properly remember now, mixing games up in my head. But I'm just saying he has that in him, of course, but he doesn't do it consistently enough. And that's where Kovacic frustrates me, because you see the flick that, is going all over Twitter and whatever yesterday. Like, it was orgasmic. Honestly, not a lot of our players can play a pass like that, right? But it's not just about being pretty. You need to be effective too. And that's where I see Kovacic struggling sometimes. So that's why I don't see enough of him, because I don't like the comparison between him and Jorginho, because they're completely different style players. We're asking completely different things from them. Busquets isn't sat there pinging passes left, right, and centre, getting 15 assists every season. I fully know that he's a niche player that not every club needs and not every system requires. Hence why we were on the verge of selling him until now that Thomas Tuchel came in, because under Frank, he wasn't a player that was needed, right? That type of player we didn't really need, other than to see games out. But when we do want a player that sits and controls the game, this is not winning the ball back, being defensive sitting. This is just sitting and controlling the play. And that's what he did incredibly well, even in the build-up yesterday to our first goal. I mean, we had a throw-in. It was a simple kind of 1-2 with Alonso. And then he plays that one, people call it a sideways pass. I call it a rather difficult forwards pass, because he needed to weight it perfectly. And then he, freed up Mount in loads of space. And then obviously Mount, Hudson-Odoi, and, Azpilicueta did the rest. So, I think there was a lot of positives coming from that. And that's just where the struggle comes from. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad I'm not the one being paid millions to make that decision, because it's a very tough decision, because you can only do it wrong. If you win, everyone will say, yeah, it worked, but what with the next game? And then if you lose, they say, well, of course, you played the wrong guy in midfield. So, it's a lose-lose situation for any manager, that, to be honest. And it's a tricky one. But I think we spoke enough about these guys, because obviously we've been going for half an hour already and we've barely got through anything. So let me quickly shout out Deno for the super chat. Love that from you, saying, Tuchel wants his right wing back to take players on. Do you think Lamptey would have been better at this if we still had him? The question is, better than who? Better than Reece? Absolutely not. Yes, more pace, but Reece James is such an incredibly underrated player. Reece James could honestly play in every position on the pitch. Every single position on the pitch other than in goal. I would probably be more confident with Reece James up front than I would be with either of our actual three strikers. Maybe not as confident as with Alonso there, but better than with the other three strikers. Honestly, put him in DM, centre mid, number 10, right wing back, right back, and even a centre back. I'm sure he'd do a job, right? I'm sure he'd do a job. So I don't think Lamptey would be better than Reece James, but would having Lamptey around as a wing-back option with Aspinall playing right centre-back, maybe. But I don't think we'll stick to three at the back for that many games anyway. We'll use it regularly, but not every game. So I don't think it's quite needed like that. And like Deno showed here, if you want to make sure that I see your message in the chat, don't hesitate to use the super chat function. Of course, you don't have to, but if you want to make sure that I see your message and read it out and stuff, do use it, because otherwise it's a bit difficult. We have 4 people. We have plenty of opinions to get through as it is. And of course, like I touched on in the beginning already, there's now a join function down below. If you want to become a member of the channel, do that. Smash the like button and subscribe, and check out these guys as well. And like I said, I wanted to bring these pictures up, but that idea didn't really work out for me somehow. But, is what it is. Because Piz said it again, PYS touched on Mason Mount, saying that he would try him with Mateo Kovacic. And that kind of leads me on to talking about him, because first of all, very interesting in my opinion, where Tuchel uses him, kind of as where Frank used him when we also played a 3-4-3, especially against Spurs at home when him and Barkley played behind Giroud. But first of all, I was just very happy for him. We all know that he was, the meme is he's Lampard's son and whatever, and he definitely was one of his favorite players, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have started as many games as he has. But he's also more than earned, let's say, the large majority of these starts. And the performance yesterday more than warranted all of it. Even when he came on against Wolves, he was one of our most creative attacking players, and that actually caused the most havoc to the Wolves team in the entire game. And yesterday was the same. Whether it was as a right-sided inside winger, or whether it was as a right-sided number 10, whatever you want to call the position, or then in the second half, once we switched formation from a 3-4-2-1 to a 3-4-1-2, he was even more influential. The link-up that him and Jorginho had was beautiful to see. The amount of havoc he caused. Yes, some passes should have been better timed, and especially his shots in the first half were really poor. But that doesn't take away from his overall performance and how influential he was to everything, whether it was his pressing, whether it was his coming deep to help progress the ball with Jorginho and Kovacic. I thought he was remarkable all round personally. And if it wasn't for Hudson-Odoi being that edge better, I think I personally would have given my man of the match to Mason Mount. So I want to see what you guys think about that. I'm not always going to go in the same order, otherwise some people are going to wait forever to talk. So I'm going to go to Jay first. Jay, what did you make of Mason Mount yesterday?
I mean, there's not much more that can be said, really. I think, I took a lot of heat on Twitter when I said that I think regardless of manager, Mason in the long term will be a starter. And I stick by that, to be honest, because what you see now, especially when we play a 3-4-3, and I wanted to kind of add when you were talking earlier, but obviously I was letting you finish, was I think people are going to become, and already are, far too obsessed with formations, especially with Tuchel, because it's kind of something maybe to just not focus all your energy on, because at Dortmund he used 11 different formations. At PSG I think it was around 9, and it's so fluid, and he almost treats management the way elite boxers work, and they change stance depending on how things are going. So people are going to have to really come to terms with the fact that he has a lot of systems, but almost all of his systems have functions and they're successful, which is different than when you were talking about Frank. When he changed things, the style wasn't working. With Tuchel, he changes things to adapt to a game, and almost always it works, as his track record would suggest. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's just part of the game in general. But with Mount, when he's not played in a double pivot, and I like the idea as well. I agree with PYS, actually. I've talked about it a lot. I like Mount as a sort of 6-8 hybrid. I think that's a really nice position for him to be in, because then he's not under so much creative pressure and he can just naturally do it. And I think that's perhaps a more successful way for him to play. But when he's not played in that double pivot, when we are playing a 3 at the back, because the double pivot's so functional, Mount's able to be sort of, I called him a penknife last season. He's got a load of tools and they're all useful for different things, and he's a real nuisance, and you don't want to play against him, and he's able to play a cutting pass or dummy the ball, take a shot from distance, decent at a set piece. And I think really it's about time that I think it's quite strange that a lot of Chelsea fans have not very nice things to say about him. I can understand frustration with young players getting prioritised over others, but to be honest with you, I think he's warranted respect now, and I think he fully deserves it. That's my opinion. I understand people have different takes on him, but yeah, I thought he was really good against Burnley, and I imagine he'll be influential against Spurs as well.
Yeah, if he plays, because who knows with Tuchel what he will do. And I agree with that. The whole formation thing, I do think there is, when you play a 4 at the back, it doesn't, like, any formation can kind of be very similar. But the 3 is different to the 4, in my opinion, because whether you have 3 behind the pivot or you have 2 behind the pivot does make a big difference, in my opinion. Of course, we essentially don't play a 3-4-3. Essentially, we play a 3-2-5. That's what we essentially play. And sometimes even a 2-3-5, because Azpi pushed up, certainly up into midfield. I mean, he bloody scored, right? So he can't exactly be sitting back in his right centre-back spot all game. So, we're certainly extremely fluid, and it's not quite as simple. But it's an interesting take, and I don't even disagree on Mount playing there, not at all. I just don't think Kovacic is the best guy to put next to Mount if you're going to play Mount in that role.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's all. That's basically where I was getting at when I disagree with that. But PYS, what did you think about Mason Mount? What did you think about Mason Mount, and what do you think his impact will be, under Thomas Tuchel going forward?
Yeah, I've said this before. I wasn't really as big a fan of Mount when his first season under Lampard, but I think he's got better as a player in sort of this season, and under Tuchel, I think he will be really good. The problem for me is obviously is he kind of clashes with Havertz, and I say this because I personally think the main 2 formations will be using a 3 at the back and 4-2-3-1 because of how much Tuchel likes Kante. So this is why I suggested to play Mount in more of a pivot role, because if we play it in a 3 at the back and he's not in that midfield pivot, is he going to be starting in one of those front 3 spots over Havertz and Pulisic? No, I don't think so. I don't think that'd be right. So yeah, I kind of see him clashing with Havertz a little bit, because again, in the 4-2-3-1, if he doesn't play in the pivot, then is he going to be playing as a number 10 over Havertz? No, I don't think so. So, I mean, he's not going to be starting every game like he did under Lampard, but I still think he's going to have a massive influence in the team. And I think, people need to get used to the fact that Tuchel is going to change formations and personnel. We may stick with 3 at the back against Spurs, but it may be a completely new front 3. He took Tammy Abraham off at half time. So he obviously wasn't very happy with him. Maybe, against Spurs, if Mount doesn't play in the pivot and it's like a Kante Kovacic or a Kante Jorginho, then maybe, Werner starts up top or Havertz starts up top, and then Mount and Pulisic in behind them. So I think there's a lot of different formations and lineups we can go with, but I think the one thing that I am settled on is that Mount won't be a consistent starter, like how he went like 13 games starting under Lampard. It's just not going to happen because there's too many formations and too many different things that Tuchel likes to do. So for me, not a certain starter because of other players and different fits and obviously different personnel that we will face. But yeah, clearly a very good player. So that's my opinion on him, really.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And to be honest, you could make the case that other than goalkeepers and centre-backs, no player should probably be starting 10, 13 games in a row anyway. And even a centre-back in a back three, you could argue probably shouldn't, because that a three means a bit more running for the centre-backs than it does in a back four and only two centre-backs. So you could make that argument anyway. So I do agree with you that in those two systems that probably are most likely, whether you call it a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2, because I think Kai, when he plays next to presumably Werner, once Werner gets some sort of confidence or some sort of threat into him again, those probably will be the two. And I do expect a lot of Havertz moving into the striker role, Werner drifting a little bit. I do think Havertz will play over Mount in that position, and the same kind of goes in a two behind the striker and a three at the back system. Hence why, I would love to see different systems, because I think with the players we have, to fit as many of the best ones in and to still make the team be as good as possible, I would maybe play something different. But hey, if Tuchel plays whatever he wants to play and it works, I'm not going to be saying or criticizing it in the slightest. Lewis, obviously we've had a lot of opinions, and I know you share a lot of the opinions I have on Mason Mount, but just quickly, what did you make of his performance yesterday? And going forward, do you agree with PYS, or do you think he'll play more?
Yeah, I thought it was a promising performance from him as well. Like, same with all the midfields. I think they overall had a good performance. I think, again, slight holes, like we're saying with the end products and everything, but that is going to come with time as well. But I do also want to build on the point of Mason Mount being able to get more regular game time under every manager. I agree and I disagree, but also to disagree, that also benefits him as a player. And I think it's going to be the same sort of similarities like you saw with Tammy Abraham, where we heavily relied on him on the first season. This season, we haven't relied on him as much. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's any less of a player. I still think, if we're going to use Tammy Abraham as an example, the guy's improved himself as a player massively over the last 18 months being at Chelsea, regardless of whether he's playing regularly or playing not. And especially for someone at his age, he doesn't necessarily have to be playing every game. And I also think doing that in his later years, you could potentially, and this is massive speculation, but you could potentially risk an earlier decline. We've seen that happen with plenty of young players where you force them to play regular games for long periods of time through the youth years. And when they get older, they just gas up a lot earlier than you'd really expect from them, and you start seeing a decline. Now, I think with Mason Mount, it's like a step back to take a step forward. You look at also the levels of midfielders that we have. Doesn't necessarily have to start every game. I see why he does. I see why he's so vital to any manager, especially with a pressing system. But same way, doesn't have to start every game, and that's to his benefit as well. A little rest now and then is not going to do him any harm. If anything, we were calling for that in the last few weeks under Frank Lampard because of literally how constantly this guy's been playing. So I don't see him starting every match, but I do still see him being vital in a lot of managers' plans. And the sky is still the limit for this kid. And if anything, kind of happy that Lampard's not here as well, because it's the same thing with Sarri, where you free the player from the shackles of being the son of the manager, like Jorginho and Sarri, for example. Now Frank Lampard and Mason Mount. In years' time, we'll probably also be speaking about how Frank Lampard was able to impact Mason Mount's play and how he's been able to learn and adapt from the manager. But same way, now he can go out and be his own player. He doesn't have to be Frank Lampard light. He can be Mason Mount now, and we can see exactly what this kid's all about. So, yeah, like, he isn't going to play every game, but that's also to his benefit as well. And I do still see him growing up and being an amazing midfielder in the future.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I agree with this, and it's a difficult one with Mount, because first of all, I see a lot of improvement and development still in him, like a lot, whichever position that Tuchel tries to mold him into the most. But I also will say, and Tuchel has commented on this a couple of times, that Kai Havertz has been so used to his talent being everything he needs that his work and he needs to be pushed. And, Tuchel also said he won't stop pushing him, but until he feels that Havertz provides the same work rate and work ethic as Mason Mount is, I think until that point, and hopefully it comes very, very soon, but until that point, I wouldn't be surprised if Mount actually starts quite a few games over Kai Havertz, like the last one. Yeah, he tried a few different things, but, you know, you even saw it on the touchline, you know. Tuchel was trying to talk to him. Kai looked like not really that interested, and he was like properly going at him, not angry, but like saying, "Come on, listen to what I'm telling you and do that, and you know, then we'll get good and stuff." So until Kai gets that sorted, I think Mason still has a fair shout in there. But I still do agree that an 8 is his best position, and as a more offensive 6 than the one next to him, he can also be great, probably better than in either a 10 or as whatever roles he played in the first half. Yesterday, basically. So that's an interesting one. And someone commented earlier, what about Ziyech? Because, and I said this when we appointed Tuchel, I think Ziyech could well be the biggest loser to us appointing Thomas Tuchel. Because I don't really see where Ziyech will play regularly. I don't see it. Other than in a 4-2-4, or whatever you want to call it, or 4-2-2-2, and then outright on the right. But then with how Callum has played, I'm not sure, because that would still mean leaving one of Pulisic or Callum Hudson-Odoi out. Of course, some of these will have injuries, so then it will be a different story. But just assuming everybody is fit, that is the only way I see Ziyech playing a lot. Of course, that right-sided, 10 inside winger in a 3-4-3 as well. But I still think he will probably pick Mason and Kai over him more, unless Vern obviously doesn't get going at all, and then maybe he'll play 2 of them. I think Ziyech will lose out quite a bit here. But, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because I like him as a guy, I like him as a player a lot. But I think with how Tuchel plays, I'm not sure Ziyech is the guy that will get so much game time. I'm going to just go basically around in a different circle now. So, Lewis, do you agree with that? Or do you think, I'm wrong, basically?
Ziyech is a bit of a sticky one. I think there's a couple question marks on a few players. I'm not too sure, because it is still very early into Tuchel's reign, which is why I'm just not really sure what to make of it. Because, like I've already said, we've already played 2 very similar teams, so I'm not sure what formation we're going to try and prefer when we're playing teams that will actually press us or teams that will actually give us a game. Maybe Ziyech will have an influence in them sorts of games. I'm not sure, but for speculation, I'll be real. It is really hard to figure out right now, because we do need to see more of Thomas Tuchel to try and figure out what his motives are going to be in these sorts of games. Because once we do that, we'll be able to get a better understanding of where he's going to be at.
Yeah, no,
big up Monster as well. Love.
Exactly. Need to get you on soon as well. I'll hit you up, bro. I'll hit you up. But yeah, no, I agree. And obviously it is a lot of speculation. And I'm saying this, I think this, but that's the thing, that's the important word here. I think. I don't know, Tuchel could be doing things and I could look like a right mug, but hey, that's the position that we put ourselves in. And, if more people did, first of all, we'd have less viewers. And secondly, people would understand that it's not always that easy. But PYS, first of all, what do you think? And secondly, what did you make of the comments that Thomas Tuchel made as to why he left Ziyech out? Because if you didn't hear it properly, and to anybody watching, of course, to say, by the way, smash the like button. We have 230 people watching and haven't even hit 100 likes yet. So go down below, smash the like button. As I always say, it doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. And if you don't have a Google account, and that's why you're not dropping a like, it takes you like a minute. Go set up a Google account and then drop a like and subscribe. But yeah, he said that Ziyech has been overworked in the last 5 weeks. And he has a tendency to, when he has been overworked, overloaded, or he used the word, he has an overload, right? And when he has that, after 5 weeks, he can't play more than 30 minutes. That's what the medical staff told him. He cannot play more than 30. And that's when Tuchel was like, well, if he can't play more than 30 minutes, what if we have a winger injury early in the game? Then I can't bring him on. What do I do? So that's why he left him out completely. What do you, first of all, make of that comment? Is that, to me, that was a bit worrying. I'm like, 5 weeks, if he said 10, that's a different story. But 5 weeks ain't even that much. So, and also he didn't actually play every game in those past 5 weeks anyway. So that's why this is slightly worrying to me. What did you make of that, and generally of my, I guess, take on Ziyech's possible struggles?
Well, I think one thing that you haven't mentioned, obviously, is that he did have that injury early on in the season. So you don't know, even though he didn't say about the injury, that could maybe have had a bit of an effect on his minutes and his game time. So I'm not sure whether the injury is bothering him. That's sort of, leading to not play more than 30 minutes after 5 weeks or whatever. But I think I still think he's going to be an important player. I agree with Lewis and you. I struggle to see where he kind of fits the most, because obviously under Lampard he was like the guaranteed right sort of sided player, you know, in a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1. Whenever we did play that, he sort of always started on the right if he was fit. But for me, I don't see that under Tuchel, because Tuchel likes his wingers to make runs in behind, and Ziyech, although he is pretty quick, he's not the player that will do the darting runs in behind. That's Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic. So Ziyech is more of a player that likes the ball to his feet. So I struggle to see where he starts a lot, but I still think he'll be an important player. And in terms of like the free back, I think he can play quite a lot in one of those front three, because he has very underrated pressing. So if he is fit, then he can play in the three at the back, because he's got good pressing and obviously the creativity. He's also played in the middle, so if he naturally drifts in the middle, you know, he can take shots, he can create. So I like him as a player. I just think if we do go to a four at the back, I do agree he could be a bit of a loser, because I see Hudson-Odoi playing on the right-hand side over him, and obviously Reece James at right back. So I think that's my opinion on him. But again, it's early days. We can't sort of say, oh, this is going to happen. This is confirmed. This is it. It's just sort of speculation at the moment, and most of it is what we want to see as fans. You know, I want to see Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic start more than Ziyech in this sort of system. The way we play is because they do make the runs in behind more than Ziyech, so that's what I prefer. And also, I just don't want Hudson-Odoi to be on the bench anymore. I think he's too good to be a bench player. So I think that's my overall opinion on it for me.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on this comment here by Afosa. I could not disagree with this comment more. I think you haven't watched the guy enough, because if anything, he's actually the opposite. The guy has an insane work rate. I just want to go back to this to Ajax Champions League campaign. When they were in the quarterfinals against, I think Real Madrid was the quarterfinal, and then semi-final against Spurs. That was during Ramadan. He's Muslim. The guy wasn't eating or drinking until like the 70th minute, and the guy had run more on the pitch by that point than anybody else on the pitch. So no one be telling me Hakim Ziyech is lazy. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. It's the opposite. And I do agree with POS that he can certainly be really good in that role. I just think that once Kai gets running, he will be preferred over Ziyech in that role. And then I also think on the left side, it will always be one of Werner and Pulisic long term in that left-sided role behind the striker if we play the system, right? That's why I'm not sure he will get that much game time. I didn't say he will never play, right? But I think once Kai gets going, he will be preferred over Ziyech in that role, even though Ziyech is arguably even more, effective, shall we say, in a more central role rather than playing properly out wide like Frank used it, which is also why I would like the 4-2-2-2 system, because that, yes, playing out wide, but you can then drift inside because one of the strikers can drift out to the right, and then it can be a lot of interchanging, which is why I came to that. But, you know, he can't even press. That's the worst comment I've ever heard in my life, honestly. It's not really letting me get rid of this comment now. But the next thing I want to talk about is Callum Hudson-Odoi. Of course, before we get to maybe some small negatives that either of you have to add, let's get to probably the biggest positive under Thomas Tuchel's era so far. I call it an era, 2 games, not even a week yet. He's been immense. He's been absolutely immense. Of course, he's officially played as a right wing back. Like I touched on already, he's not actually a right wing back, other than very few occasions. If anything, defensively, we shift to a 4-4-2, and with him being the right mid, in that defensive shape, only very few times did he drop back to properly help Azpi out, as if he was a right wing back. But even then, when we play the 3-4-3, the winger sometimes has to help out the right back. That's how football works. So we shouldn't even class it as a proper right wing back. He just played as a right mid, and he's done incredibly well. You could see that this confidence went up as the game went on in both games. He became more and more confident to try and take on players. I still think he needs to work on his left foot because he doesn't trust it to cut inside when he's playing on the right. He never does. He shoots with it all right, but he doesn't trust it. That's why he never tries to cut in when he's on the right, which probably is what the managers want from him anyway. But to make him less predictable over time, he needs to make that an option for him, because otherwise it will be too easy to stop. But he's been absolutely immense. Like, he worked hard, wins the balls back, presses really well, puts in cross after cross after cross, some better than others, but still cross after cross after cross. I mean, Tuchel even touched on he needs to work on his precision and timing a little bit. But hey, the kid's 20. People forget how young Callum Hudson-Odoi is just because 2 years ago put in a transfer request, which, I wasn't happy with. But, and I know Jay wasn't either. Jay was even in the camp that, 70 million for Bayern Munich, sell him right now. Although I will also say, which I think a lot of people forget always, it wasn't an obligation to buy him for 70 million. Hence why I was never a fan of it. If they said 70 million, definitely fair. But I don't think they would have ever done that. I thought they would have taken him on a year's loan and then probably tried to renegotiate rather than actually paying 70 million for it. But regardless, he's been incredible. I don't think there's a single bad word you can say about him, to be honest, in the last 2 games. Got an assist, obviously, for Azpilicueta with brilliant play. Obviously, we will touch on the goals and Aspi as well, but can't really ask for much more. He knew he was coming behind him. Don't know how he knew. Maybe Aspi shouted for him, but he knew. And then drifted inside, take out all the defenders and left Aspi with so much space. Obviously, still a difficult finish and a great finish. But so he just did everything right. And I just could not be more pleased. And Jay, because I know you have been a bit critical of him in the past, I want to hear what you have to say, about him in these last 2 games, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, can I just touch on Ziyech for like 30 seconds?
Oh, yeah,
just
go on.
Because
Sorry,
I just want to touch, I think it's like a fallacy of the eye test and the optics. Like you hear a lot of backlash against people who use stats regularly that they don't maybe operate and use the eye test. I think with players like Ziyech, I think Ozil stands out as well, and Kai, they look nonchalant. And I think especially in England and English football, that is not appreciated whatsoever.
Now, Ozil looks like Andy's, let's be honest.
Yeah. But you see, I don't think it's a criticism that a player's walking. Like I've seen it in the comments, like, he was walking around, without wishing to, I'm going to come across hyperbolic, but Messi spends so much of his time walking, and then it's about what he does with the ball at his feet. And sometimes you have to allow players like that a bit of creative license. And Ziyech obviously presses much more than it might perhaps look because he's really quite slender and he's stealthy, and you don't always see him doing it, but he is doing it. And that's where the eye test fails you, and then you need stats to back it up. So I think there's a bit of give or take with both. But yeah, for Hudson-Odoi, I've always wanted to be proved wrong with Hudson-Odoi. I think if there was a 70 million, obligation to buy, I said we should have done it for 2 reasons. First being that I think it's unlikely in the next 2 to 3 seasons post-COVID that you're going to see many players go for 70 plus. And secondly, if he's not being played at Chelsea, I don't want him rotting on the bench. I'd rather him personally have a good career. That's why I don't think Loftus-Cheek should come back to the club purely because I want to see him have a career and be successful and play regularly, because I think he deserves that and his abilities warrant it. And that is the same with Hudson-Odoi at the time when he wasn't playing as regularly as he should have. And if he's not going to play, then sell him and let him develop, because that's what he deserves of a kid with such talent. But under Tuchel, as we expected, Hudson-Odoi is looking outstanding. I think, again, people are getting too obsessed with the right wing back. He's evidently not really doing that, although he's put in a shifting coming back as well, and he's made a few key interceptions and tackles. I think that's really outstanding to see. But I think the main thing, the main criticism you can level at Hudson-Odoi at the moment is trusting his left foot. I think that's a really, really intelligent observation, if I'm honest, because he's looked pretty flawless the last 2 games. I think him and Thiago Silva, for me, have stood out the most. Thiago Silva is just looking like a Rolls-Royce footballer, if I'm honest, and Hudson-Odoi is looking like it almost seems as though Hudson-Odoi has been spoken to before Tuchel arrived and was being told, you're the guy that this manager is going to really like. So let's see how it goes. And it's nice to see him playing with freedom. It's nice to see a smile on his face. It looks like he actually wants to be here. I think putting him in a position, like right wing back might perhaps make him, because I sometimes felt Hudson-Odoi was a bit lazy on the pitch. And again, that was just optics. I don't have stats to back that up, but maybe putting him in a position where it says on the TV, you're right wing back, he has to put in some more hard yards and he has to shift a bit more. And that's quite nice to see, So, that's where I stand at. I'm really happy for him. And yeah, like Lewis said, if you haven't liked or subscribed, what are you doing? What are you here for? If you're not going to like and subscribe, support people that are bringing new content, because I don't think people understand how hard it is to do streams. I've only been streaming for the last 2 and a bit weeks on the Chelsea social channel, and appearing on here and everywhere. It's tough stuff. So big up what the creators do. So make sure you support them, like and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Exactly. I agree on the whole sentiment on Callum Hudson-Odoi. And PYS, I want to get your thoughts in. It's still weird. Someone that doesn't have a face cam, it still sometimes feels like, is he even here? I don't know. Especially because Lewis's face cam is gone. I mean, he's quickly not here. So I get confused sometimes. But no, it's fine. And let's get your thoughts on Callum.
Yeah, I'm one of his biggest fans, honestly. I have been for a long time. A couple of you were mentioning like the 70 million thing. I was fuming when I heard about that because I think he's more than a 70 million pound player, or at least will be. One of the comparisons I make is, Dortmund are demanding like 100 million for Jadon Sancho. I'm putting it out there. Hudson-Odoi is a better player than Jadon Sancho. So
no way.
Yep, 100% better player than Jadon Sancho. He's got more attributes and he'll go further in his career. I'm putting that on record here. So I think, definitely Hudson-Odoi should be starting most of the games this season. One of his biggest fans, and I don't really mind where he plays because, as we've seen in the last few games, he can do the defensive duties that he got so criticised for. So for me, yeah, definitely one of the players that's going to be a future star of England in the Premier League and in the world also. I really rate him that highly. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I think worth right now more than Sancho is crazy to say because Sancho's been playing regular football for 2 seasons, so that's why that can't possibly be the case. But in terms of ability and potential, I don't disagree. I think Sancho has a lot of potential in him as well that can grow. He's already getting crazy number of assists and goals, right? He struggled for goals until the new year now, but still. But I would personally see them at a very similar level, but at a very similarly high level, right? Without disagreeing with you or without really disagreeing with JI.
Currently, you see them at the same level? Because I don't.
No. I think them potential-wise.
Laurenz, how many goals and assists would Hudson-Odoi get in the Bundesliga? Let's be honest.
I don't know,
think he gets many as Sancho.
Honestly,
I don't.
I don't think it's that simple to say how would he do because, and I did this in the past. Hazard was here, and people told me.
There's a thing. Bayern wanted him for 70 million, and he barely even played for us. There's a reason for that.
For sure.
Bayern's talent, I
definitely
second to none.
But let me just make this point because a few years ago, when people were comparing Hazard and Neymar, when Neymar was just moved to PSG or was still at Barcelona and stuff like that, and I was sat here saying, if Hazard was in La Liga, he would be scoring 35 goals as well every season. Well, look at that now. Look how wrong I was. So that's why I don't think it's quite as simple as saying this is what Hudson-Odoi would do.
Injuries. There's a little difference on that one, isn't it?
But even when he wasn't injured at the very start, he came in overweight. Like, what you doing? Sort yourself out. Literally, like, don't be doing that. Especially when you apparently have your dream move. Work for it. Like, come on, you get paid enough to be fit at least. Like physically.
Yeah, that's Eden for you though. I get that.
It is, and when you're at the club for a few years, that's a different thing. But when you get your dream move, I don't think you should be doing that. So that's why I'm just saying, who knows how Callum Hudson-Odoi would do? Yeah, of course it's speculation, but you can't take speculation for a fact ever. But Lewis, let me just quickly get your thoughts on Callum of the last 2 games, and because I said this in the past, I think I said this on POS's and Dubois' podcast, which sadly seems to not continue for the time being, which is sad. But check him out on Twitter and Jay as well, Chelsea Socials, Lewis in the what's it called? Description. Subscribe to him, of course. I said that Hudson-Odoi would probably be the player that would benefit most from Tuchel, but I've also kind of somewhat changed my mind to it. That I think maybe alongside Kai Havertz, just because the central players usually end up exploding more under Tuchel than wide players do, because goals will always be the thing that people look at. You can get 35 assists and people still won't look at you like crazy. I mean, the fact that Thomas Müller didn't even come up for a vote in the Team of the Year vote, whether it was EA or whoever did that, right? It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever had. So just, assists don't mean enough to people, right? Hence why I think Kai Havertz will probably end up with more goals eventually, whether it's next season or by the end of this season, than Hudson-Odoi will. It's because of how far wide out. Can I speak? Apparently not.
Right, we're both hungover today.
And I didn't even drink. But
Oh, mate. Go
exactly.
on.
So that's why I think those 2. But in general, I think no one can be unhappy with Callum for these last 2 games, can they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Hudson-Odoi, he's fully justified why he should have been starting for the last 2 months. I'm not going to speak too much on Frank Lampard because Frank Lampard's left now. I don't want to keep slandering a legend of the club, but I will say, and someone said in the comment section as well, the more that Callum Hudson-Odoi keeps churning out performances like this, the more I'm going to sit there and think, how do we keep this man on the bench for so long? Because his form has been ridiculous. Again, everything I say, though, about the players, I can only take it with a pinch of salt because of the level of opposition that we face. We face teams that have allowed us to play the brand of football that we've wanted, teams that have dropped deep and just allowed us to take control of the game. So I need my final thoughts on these players to be when we face a team that isn't going to allow us to control a match. But for now, first 2 games, absolutely excellent. Like we can all quote the Brady and Dyche links that what Liam Toomey was talking about, where he was like, where they're all arguing because Brady literally couldn't handle Callum Hudson-Odoi for 90 minutes, and that's just the quality of player that we've had. I mean, Pi is saying that what was it? He's close to Jadon Sancho in terms of level, in terms of his ability and how far he could go. I didn't even think about it like that, but it's not to say he's wrong. I mean, I'm definitely all here for the prop as well. Hudson-Odoi's ceiling is high. If anything, I think in terms of all our academy players, the only player that might have a higher ceiling or anything close to that, in my opinion, is Reece James. So they're the pair that we definitely need to look out for. And if we can get them linking up together as well, perfect. But it's still early days. We still haven't even gone through a full week of Tuchel ball yet, so I can't say too much on it. But last 2 performances, he's been our standout player in a really good bunch of players so far.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And before getting to the Alonso discussion, which will get Lewis and myself a bit of stick from the comments, I would assume, again, guys, smash the like button. We have 222 people watching and still just about haven't hit 150 likes. So go down below, smash the like button, subscribe.
Guys, asking for 1 button, please. It's not too much. Get that
mouse.
I
know all of you kids
scroll
these
down
days
a
probably
bit.
watch on phones, not on computers, but you know. We'll scroll down and leave, apparently.
Can I touch on the Hudson-Odoi thing just quickly?
Go on.
Like, especially with the Sancho comparison, you know, my opposition to it is simply that I think Sancho's, you know, his career acceleration has happened much younger, and I worry with Hudson-Odoi that perhaps his injury long term might give him a few issues. But that's not to say that I don't want him.
Man.
I don't want him to be there. Like I want Hudson-Odoi to be like through the roof, and I couldn't imagine, you know, anything better really. But it's just the Sancho comparison is a tough one because I think Sancho's already shown, you know, his ceiling. He's already revealed that card, whereas Hudson-Odoi is yet to do so. And I know that he plays in a slightly tougher league, but I personally watch a lot of the Bundesliga. I think it's a stronger league than people give it credit for as well.
I agree with that. It's just a different league. It's just
it's different. It is different, but
you have so much space as a forward.
Yeah, and with Hudson-Odoi, like the nicest thing for him is that he's playing regularly, and it doesn't seem like the tabloids are on him. It doesn't seem like Twitter's on him. It just seems like he's progressing nicely, and that's the most beneficial thing for him right now. And I really hope that PYS is right and that Hudson-Odoi turns out to be one of the world's best players. Yeah, I know Hajir thinks so.
I don't disagree. And obviously there has been a lot of prop for him. And as you know, if we're going to prop people, I will say this. Without injuries, I still think Loftus-Cheek is the most talented player to ever come out of our academy. But sadly, injuries have kind of stopped that. I'm not giving up hope, though. I will never give up hope, right? And I don't care what anyone says. Right, let's get to different things. Let's get to Mr. Marcos Alonso, who scored an absolute screamer yesterday. And I said this on Twitter. I said this to people. As soon as I saw the lineup, we all knew he was scoring. It was inevitable. It was as inevitable as Messi scoring a free kick. Like, it just happens. There's nothing that would ever stop that happening. It took him long enough in the game. I was like, oh, could I be wrong? Absolutely not. Brilliant play in the build-up, by the way, by Pulisic to chip it between the two, but through Laurenz and whoever the other defender was, to get it to Marcos Alonso. That's brilliant play that people underappreciate, thinking it's just a simple cross. No, it wasn't a cross. That was purposely meant for Alonso right into that area where he put it. Which is brilliant. Aussie TV, thank you for tuning in, and talk to you soon. See you soon, hopefully. But yeah, Hudson-Odoi stepping up, playing in that left wing back spot, having an average game at best until then. Didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't do anything until he scored, in my opinion. was still slow on the ball. Didn't really do much. Whenever he crossed, it was a bad cross. Usually he didn't cross because it took too long to cross, which is always what I criticize about him. But then when the man turns up in the box and is about to score a goal, then there is probably no better player to have. And I saw this yesterday on Instagram, Twitter, wherever it was, saying, whichever youth coach made Marcos Alonso left back, robbed us of one of the best strikers of this generation. And they could quite possibly not be wrong. And I'm honestly saying this, like, as much as it sounds like I'm taking the piss, with the form of Giroud, Tammy, and Werner, I would not be upset just to try it out in a game or two to play Alonso up front. How bad can he go? He's decent in the air. He can shoot. His passing is, not great for a left back, but decent enough for a striker, I think. So I think the guy could do great things. Okay, he doesn't have a right foot, which would be a bit of an issue as a striker. But still, other than that, hey, give the man some props. But in general, people still need to stop overhyping him. Like, he still wasn't good. He just scored the goal. Chilwell has done that before this season. And people are now saying he's better than Chilwell, even though Chilwell has done the same thing on more occasions. Okay, he's played more. But Alonso did also play the first few games, right? And didn't do nothing other than be awful. So let's not forget that. And I do also think we need to consider that Chilwell has basically never played as a left wing back, while that's by far Alonso's best position. So you can't really judge Ben Chilwell's performance at left wing back in one game that's how good Ben Chilwell is as a left wing back, not how it works. And also, I still don't really understand why people thought he was that bad. Didn't think he was that bad at all. The only thing he should have done, and Alonso would have done in that game, was scored a cutback from Havertz, and we probably would have won the game. But other than that, I didn't really see that much wrong with Chilwell. Yes, crossing wasn't great, but neither is Alonso's. So what is this? Any which way. I keep forgetting, which way around I'm going to go. So I'm just going to put it out there, and whoever speaks first, the stage is yours. So give me your thoughts on Alonso. Give me your thoughts on Alonso yesterday.
Who wants to break it?
I'll go if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah, I thought Alonso was decent. I mean, I agreed with you, Laurenz. It was on your channel last week where we both said that we'd sell Emerson and keep Alonso because Alonso, I think it was on this channel anyway, because Alonso...
I think it was on this channel, but I disagreed.
Did you disagree? Okay, right. Yeah, I said I'd keep Alonso and sell Emerson because if you're going to play 4 at the back, you play Chilwell, and a 3 at the back, I think Alonso plays there 4. I think Emerson becomes slightly moot in that scenario. But yeah, that's the thing with Alonso. He gets away with perhaps some less encouraging performances when he's able to directly contribute to goals. But I thought it was all right. I also tweeted that Alonso was either going to score or, make the mistake that led to Burnley scoring the winner. So it was always going to be one or the other. He's one of those players. But when you look at football slightly through rose-tinted lenses, it's what makes you enjoy the game a bit, I guess. Maybe not during the full 90, but when you can look back on it and think slightly differently, that at least it's entertaining when Alonso plays. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? But, I don't want to gas him up too much because it's rare that you see him give a 10 out of 10 performance. But, sometimes we need a bit of Marcos Alonso on the pitch because he's so he's unorthodox, I think, and it's quite baffling to play against him. So fair play to him for what he did, and hopefully we just see more success for him. And I don't want any disharmony in the squad. So as long as he's doing well and he's happy and the players around him are happy, then that's totally fine for me.
Yeah, I kind of echoed that the same in terms of if the squad's better off and we've got more harmony around the squad, that's going to be better for the team in general because we haven't had that for the last month and a half as a minimum. I think Marcos Alonso's performance, you said it perfectly. Marcos Alonso couldn't have cost us that game. We played most of our play on the right-hand side. We dominated possession for long periods, so we were always in control. So for the most part, he couldn't have really done much. Great finish for the second goal. Amazing finish. That's going to rack up as one of his best goals for Chelsea. Performance, it was okay. I think maybe people overhype it because Ben Chilwell has been terrible the last few weeks, but that's just form for me. I still rate Ben Chilwell over Marcos Alonso in my opinion. He'll probably... I'll say this though, Alonso will probably start the Spurs game. And if we play 3 at the back, I'd understand that as well. His recent form is better than Ben Chilwell's, and plus he'll have more confidence against Spurs because he always produces a good result in those sorts of games. So I kind of understand if he plays the game, cool. I still have no trust in Marcos Alonso as a player. Every time he's on the ball, I believe he's just a howler away from costing us a match. And that's because we've just seen Marcos Alonso do it too many times to us. I'm going to need to see a lot to start believing in him as a left-back. I'll give him his props for the Burnley game. Cool, we had a good performance, we won. Nice, I'm happy with that. if Thomas Tuchel can get me starting to believe in Marcos Alonso again, that guy is an absolute miracle worker. Because right now, if you're going to tell me on ability, I'd still back Ben Chilwell over Marcos Alonso as a left wing back. I do think he's just better all round. Marcos Alonso looks better, but he's also going to have that bias against him because he won us the league in a left wing back position. So everyone's going to say, yeah, Marcos Alonso is great, man. He won us the league a few years ago. He didn't win us the league a few years ago. If we really want to go back into 16-17, we played a formation that nobody was ready for and nobody anticipated. We made Victor Moses look like a baller for that season. And then as soon as teams got used to it, got exposed. Same thing with Marcos Alonso, got exposed. Won us the league that season, whatever. Great performance, great season. I love that. That's one of the most fun seasons I've had following Chelsea Football Club. You got to take these nostalgia goggles off when it comes to some of these players. And that's the same thing that I'm doing with Marcos Alonso. You cannot tell me based off one game that he's the best left wing back that we have at the club. Can't tell me based off one game he's the best left back that we have at the club. Right now, I still think he's third best. With that same breath, he probably still starts against Spurs. I can accept that. I can understand that with recent form and everything, and I hope he has an amazing performance. I would love to be proved wrong. Like I always say, when I say an opinion that is a bit negative on one of my players, I want to be proved wrong with my opinion. But I don't think I'm getting proved wrong with this one because I just haven't seen enough good from Marcos Alonso. I've said, as a left wing back, it's so much easier to look good compared to a left back. You have an extra defender to support you if you get caught out on the turn. Going forward, you're just there to provide width and extra support in the midfield and in the attack as well. But all you're really doing is supporting. You're not directly responsible for anything except just the left-hand side. But you have another left forward and another left centre back to handle the pressure as well. So there is a massive, massive leap in the change of responsibility from a left back to a left wing back. So the jury is still out for Marcos Alonso, in my opinion. But same way, good performance.
Yeah, I echo that for the most part. PYS, I want to get your thoughts involved as well. Kind of left you out for accidentally too long. Kind of thought you would just take the stage first, and then you didn't, and now you went third. My bad. But yeah, I mean, I do see a lot of people that disagree with my logic, saying, and Lewis's as well, saying Alonso was our best player or one of our best under Kante. And yeah, he was for about 15 games. You know, people need to understand this. Our season under Kante, we struggled until we played Arsenal. Then we were really good until we lost to Spurs in January. And after that, it was a grind. And very few games after that in that season were particularly great. And very few players for the rest of that season played particularly great. Yeah, Hazard had a few great games. Costa had a few great games. And I'm sure Pedro did as well. But, you know, no one was incredible from after that Spurs loss that I can remember right now. But PYS, maybe you completely disagree with me. Maybe you agree with me. And by the way, Afosa and whatever else, everyone in the chat, this isn't saying I didn't like Alonso in that season. But it's not that season anymore. That was 16-17. We're now in 2021. This is a different situation. You can't compare that. Like, are you going to say now just because, you know, Lampard was still playing 4 years ago, we should bring him back as a player now that we sacked him as a manager? No. Like, stop comparing this. Sorry. PYS, go.
Yeah, for me, obviously, you've touched on the nostalgia there. I'm, want to talk about, the current form and us now in general and how he fits. I still think he's dead wood for me. I just don't think he's a good player, and I think when it comes to Alonso, it's a bigger issue. I want to touch on something that Alex Goldberg actually said, that he's shown a lack of effort far too many times. The bus incident was disrespectful and pathetic, but also he and me both understand Tuchel's clean slate approach. I said to expect a clean slate approach. Obviously, it's a new manager, that happens, but I think it's a bigger thing when it comes to these senior fringe players on high wages. I think they get their way too much at this club, and there's a big issue with player power at this club, and I think he's one of the people responsible for that. So for me, Alonso, I really don't want to see him play for Chelsea. I just don't like him, but obviously when he's on the pitch, I'll support him. He played well yesterday, or not even well, he played okay. I mean, I agree with one of the comments saying that Burnley didn't play, and it's when teams play that Alonso's not good. He didn't get tested at all. He had the freedom, but again, I mean, we've not really talked about Emerson much. Do you not think that Emerson is a very attacking left back or left wing back if he plays there? Because I do. I think Emerson is very attacking. I think when both of them get asked to defend, Alonso and Emerson, that's when they're not good. But when they have freedom, I think they're both as good as each other. And I think Alonso scores more goals, but wouldn't you agree that Emerson's faster? He's better on the ball. You know, he's better at linking up.
That's the thing with Emerson for me. He's better on the turn. He's better athletically, but as actual players, I don't rate either of them. I can't be honest. Emerson will start for me over Alonso just based on default, and that would be it.
I think
I agree with you, actually. I agree on this. Sorry to interrupt. I agree on the Emerson thing. Just that under Tuchel and under Frank, we create from the right, score from the left. Hence, you don't need the creator in Emerson on the left. Also, his crossing isn't as good as it should be anyway, which is his issue. If Emerson had good crossing, he would give Chilwell a serious run for his money playing defensive teams, in my opinion. But because he doesn't have good crossing and is defensively really lazy, you know, the whole Ziyech thing earlier, that actually goes for Emerson. That's why he won't win a header. He won't get to the far post quite as quickly as Alonso will, which was why at left wing back, I would pick Alonso over Emerson for that. But as a left back, I would go for Emerson over him any day. Sorry, continue your point, POS.
Yeah, go on, POS.
Is he still here? I don't really have much to say, to be honest, other than what I've said. I just think, that there's a bigger issue when it comes to player power at Chelsea. I think Alonso is one of the people responsible for that, and I just think he gets away with too much. I just don't like it. Same with Rudiger. You know, I don't know whether it was a PR move or not, whether Rudiger did cause issues or the players were just coming out to sort of defend him and it's a bit of a PR move. I know me and you, Laurenz, we spoke about this. We're not really... I mean, we can have our opinions. We're not really decided. We'll never really know the actual truth, whether he did cause problems or not. But again, if we're touching on Rudiger, I don't see why at the moment he's playing over Zuma, other than the fact that Tuchel likes him and that he's German. I think Zuma has been one of the most consistent players for us this season. And I think even if we're playing in a free back, he's not as good as on the ball, but still, I think he's a better defender than Rudiger. He's better in the air. He's more powerful. So I don't know. I'll back the manager. Obviously, I'm not ever going to be Tuchel out unless things go horrifically south, as they did under Lampard. But for me, I just think there's certain players in this club that get away with far too much and that are still considered dead wood for me, and players that we should sell if we want to really get up there and compete for titles in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree on this, the player power issue, and that certainly is the thing. The issue is that we don't know for sure. And I do agree with the sentiment that the West Brom thing was disrespectful and whatever else, but people can make mistakes. Like, just because he did that, I don't think that's enough to say, okay, you need to go now. And the other things, we don't know how true they are. And the issues are, and I've said this to Lewis as well, I think in the back three, I understand where Rudiger plays just because he's so much faster and more comfortable on the ball than Zuma in close space. And Rudiger, has better long balls that Tuchel does want and likes. Hence why, that makes sense to me. In a back four, I would pick Zuma over Rudiger any day of the week. But, as the last topic we're going to touch on today before wrapping this up, ladies and gentlemen, again, smash the like button. Have we hit 150? Let me check. 143, 7 more likes to go. Go down below, smash that like button right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. And like I touched on a couple of times already, sorry to mention this, but YouTube telling me you need to make a separate video mentioning this.
Click it, but press it. Exactly. I'm not going to click it this time, but click it.
But people have told me, YouTube has told me I need to make a separate video announcing the membership scheme. No, I'm just telling you now, if you want to get involved, and someone said, how do I get on the stream? The problem is so many people want to get in these streams, it feels super unfair to pick. So that's why this is like, become a member. It's like, I'm not going to make you pay for anything crazy, right? First of all. And secondly, if you don't want to join, don't become a member. I'm not forcing anybody, right? But if you want to make sure that you can come on these streams kind of at least once a month or kind of whenever you want, become a member and we'll sort that out, because otherwise it's so unfair to other people. 10 people asking, I can't exactly have 10 people on the same time. So, that's that. There's a join button underneath. So, click that. But the last topic I will get to, and I will get to Jay first because he did say he needs to leave very soon. So my question is, and my issues certainly are, well, not issue, but my question is, what about Reece James? Because obviously we haven't seen a forward the back formation yet. And Reece James did come on for Hudson-Odoi for the last few minutes or for the last 20, 15 against Burnley and did actually play really well. I was very happy with him when he came on. And, Tuchel, singled that out as well and said he did really well. But if we're going to keep playing a theatre back, Callum Hudson-Odoi will most likely, with his performances, unless they drop, keep playing that right wing-back spot. What happens to Reece James? Because like Lewis said, I do think that him and Hudson-Odoi with the current players are probably the ones with the highest ceiling potential-wise. So we need to play the guy. Either I want Tuchel to find him a new position, whether he plays him as a right centre back and makes him defensively a bit better, or whether he puts him into midfield. I don't care, but he needs to play. And that's why I'm still a bigger fan of playing a forward at the back where you can just play right back, because we wouldn't play Azpi there. I don't think Tuchel would either. So I want to see that. And I will get to Jay first. First of all, what do you make of the fact that Reece James didn't start the first two? Do you think he would start if we go to a back four? And will we go to a back four? Or how do you see the whole Reece James situation developing? Of course, people have to remember he is very young. So, just because he didn't start 2 games, this isn't like the end of his career at Chelsea now.
Yeah, I'm not going to read anything into the opening 2 games in terms of lineup, in terms of anything like that. I think I've said this multiple times. In my opinion, I struggle to think of a team in Europe with a squad as bloated as Chelsea's. So there's an awful lot of components, and Tuchel's so meticulous. I think he's trying certain players out, more so than Reece, because Reece is, exactly what you're going to get. I agree with Lewis, and actually I would take it a step further that, in my opinion, Reece has the highest ceiling in terms of his position. I think the chance of Reece becoming the highest quality right back in comparison to, say, Tammy as a striker, there's a greater chance of Reece becoming an amazing right back. Do you know what I mean? I think he's got the biggest chance of exceeding in his position than any other player in the youth team. That being said, I quite like the idea of maybe pushing him into midfield if that's something that would be thought about, because I think he has attributes that would make him successful there. But in a back four, obviously right back is the place where I'd like to see him, and I think we will see him an awful lot, because Azpi's not going to be here for too much longer, and I don't know if he has the pace to play it right back, consistently.
Yeah. And
then, adding to my point of maybe moving Reece into midfield, it depends on how things go throughout the summer, if I'm honest, because we've got, obviously, like I said, a bloated squad. There's going to be a lot of people leaving, but then we've also got to decide what we're going to do with Ampadu, people like Gurhi, people like Gilmour. Like if Ampadu's going to come into the squad, which would be lovely to see, he's extremely versatile, but that might mean Reece won't get a chance in the midfield, which means that Reece might have to take playing slightly less. And then on the flip side, he is still 2021. And even though he is outstanding and he should be playing all the time, it's not a crime for him to not be playing every single game. And Lewis, again, was right where he said that when you play young players consistently all the time, and specifically in the Premier League, they burn out in earlier stages. I mean, it even happened to Wayne Rooney, right?
I was going to say he's the best example for it.
Yeah, Rooney's one of my favourite players ever. I love watching Wayne Rooney, but his peak finished earlier than it should have, because he was playing from the age of 16, 17. So he's kind of the real example there. But Reece will get his minutes, Reece will get his time. The club are not going to sell him. I just can't see that happening. So it is what it is. Just give Tuchel the time. I'm not going to read into anything over the next 2, maybe opening 5 games I'll give him before I start looking a bit more into who's being picked and why they're being picked and trying to deconstruct it. But for now, I'm just trying to enjoy the new process, really.
Fair. And Jay, if you need to go, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Check him out, of course. His links are in the description, his Twitter, and the link to his Chelsea social YouTube channel that he does with a few other people. Check that out, subscribe, do all of the good things. I'm sure he will come back in the near future. So I hope you guys enjoy him. I certainly enjoy having his company. So brilliant. Thanks for coming on. And, we'll talk to you soon, bro.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Pleasure to meet you boys that I've not met before. And big up everyone in the stream. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow everyone that you don't already. And yeah, I'll see you later, Laurenz, man.
Take care, bro. Nice chatting.
Bye-bye.
See you,
See you later, mate.
See you.
And now, PYS. Do you agree with the sentiment of, Jay? Or do you have any different thoughts? Because I think we all kind of agree with it. It's just, obviously, I'm not saying I'm criticizing Tuchel for it right now at all. But if this keeps going, I will start criticizing. I'm telling you, if Reece James doesn't play, doesn't start any of the next 10 games, doesn't start at least 3 of the next 10 games, I'm going to be fuming. So, leave me your thoughts.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with what Jay was saying in the fact that he will play quite a bit. I think obviously I agree with you as well. You were saying he could play right centre back, but for me, I'm not worrying too much at the moment, just because, you know, it's not like we're playing, you know, Rudiger right centre back over Reece James. We've got very capable Azpilicueta, who's the club captain, who I respect a lot. So I think, you know, I respect that Azpi's playing, you know, and he is playing over Reece James at the moment. I think because I honestly, I think when I've seen Reece James at right wing back, I'm a bit undecided. I just prefer him as a natural right back. I think he can play right wing back as well, but obviously that seems to, you know, be Hudson-Odoi's position at the moment. So I think if he's going to play in a free back, it will be in a right centre back. But as I said, I've not got too much issues at the moment. It's because we're not dropping points because of Reece James not playing. You know, it's not like some of the times where you could say, oh, Reece James has to play. We're not doing very well at the moment. It's not anything like that. We're winning games. We've won the last yesterday or whatever, and obviously drew against Wolves. So it's not. I don't think it's a big issue at the moment. I still think he's got a massive future here. Obviously, and again, Tuchel will change formations. He will go to a four at the back, and I don't see Azpilicueta starting and right back over Reece James in a four back. I just don't see that happening. Because that to me would mean that he rates the experience of Azpilicueta over the pure ability and talent over Reece James, and I don't think that's the case. I think that he's just sort of playing Azpi at the moment, obviously in this free back, because he's more experienced in that position over Reece James. Obviously played there under Kante and such, so I don't have too many issues at the moment. I think he will still be a massive future at this football club. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I agree with that. But my issue is just I think playing him as a right centre back is wasting a lot of his talent, which is why I wouldn't be the biggest fan of it. Hence why I hope Tuchel finds a four at the back formation which gets us all of the wins. Then that's just what I'm hoping for. If just this three at the back system gets us the wins, that's way more important than any individual playing. Chelsea winning, Chelsea doing well is way more important than anybody else, anything else. But if we can win in a different way, I would prefer to have some youth players and my favourite players playing. I think that's just natural to any fan, personally. But first of all, quickly, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to, because we're going to wrap this up very soon, if you want to have anything else to add, use the super chat function, get that involved if you want to make sure we read out your message. But just quickly, Lewis, I don't think there's that much more to say on the Reece James situation, but if you have anything, do add it now.
Just depth, innit? Imagine we're in this sort of position where one of, if not in my opinion, the best right back in the league isn't getting game time. That's a madness, and that speaks on the depth that we have in this squad. I don't think it's anything for long term. Like we said numerous amount of times, we played two very similar sides, so I'm not surprised we've had two very similar lineups for this sort of game. If we play four at the back, guaranteed Reece James walks back into this team. Like blindfolded, he gets back into a squad. So I'm not too worried about game time or anything like that. It is only 2 games. It's still a very small pool of games to really try and pinpoint anything on. Even the Spurs game might not start that match if we're going to stick with 5 at the back, because we've already said the issues are further forward down on the pitch, like who's going to play in the 3 up front, or if we're going to do 4-3-1-2, are we even going to have any wingers in the game anyway? So there's a lot of different questions to get into for this. Reece James, though, I'm not going to take too much into it. Rival fans are going to try to use it to say that we were overhyping him at the start of the season, but this is just squad rotation and healthy squad rotation. And for the first time in years, good rotation options. One of the biggest issues we've had over the last few years is our plan Bs stink. Now, we have a squad that's perfectly suited for a plan B. We just still didn't have a plan B until now Thomas Tuchel's in charge. Now I'm just waiting for that flexibility to take shape. But all optimistic from here, and I'm not too worried about Reece James anyway, because the last few games that he's played, he's looked rushed back from injury anyway. If this means we get a fully fresh Reece James when he actually gets to run the games back in the lineup, all for it. Hudson-Odoi's balling out for me, Azpi's balling out for me.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think he looked good when he came on. I would agree with this, but then he looked really good against Luton and looked fit again. Hence why, I'm not sure about the fitness situation. But the last thing I do want to touch on, because it is nearly 8 p.m. UK time on transfer deadline day. So I think we should probably just about touch on it, even though Chelsea is doing absolutely nothing. But Chelsea doing absolutely nothing means Billy Gilmour is not going anywhere, which there was, of course, a lot of reports, and people seem very certain that he would go out on loan after him not making the squad for a second time in a row yesterday. And that is the situation that I do want to talk to you guys about, because I've said this before. I think other than control and experience, I think Jorginho doesn't lack anything over Jorginho. Billy doesn't lack anything over Jorginho, while he has pace, mobility, and aggression in his style. Just because he's Scottish, that's just different to being Italian/Brazilian. Like, you're gonna have a different type of aggression in you. So that is an interesting one, and I don't think he should necessarily be playing over Jorginho in the last 2 games, because Jorginho has been very good in those last 2 games, particularly against Burnley, in my opinion. But I'm a fan that he's sticking around, because I think if Tuchel wants a Jorginho type player in almost every game on the pitch, then Billy will get a lot of games. And if Billy gets a lot of games, everything's good. You know, I hope for him personally that he gets enough game time to make the Scotland squad for the Euros. If the Euros even happen, let's see about that. But I really hope that he can make the Euros. I'd be really excited for him and happy for him if he can make that. So hence why I really hope that, you know, he gets enough game time for that. And I also think he deserves it. He's a brilliant player. You know, of course, I'm not saying he should start every game, because we don't know how that will go. And he's had a couple of games where he wasn't incredible, but he's also had a lot of games where he was man of the match. You know, most of the games he played, he was one of our best players on the pitch, which is crazy, even though some of them have of course, been cup games. But still, cup was against Liverpool, and they weren't like a really bad team. They were, you know, played one of their better teams. They had Salah and Mane on the pitch, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, you know, don't underestimate it. Did it in the Prem against what's their face? Everton. So he knows what he's doing. Of course, he came back from a bad injury, so, you know, don't overdo it. But I'm in general happy that he's not going out on loan anywhere. Maybe I would have liked some different loans for some certain players. Maybe Guay, push him up to the Prem already if we want to get him involved at Chelsea next season. Maybe a bit of Premier League experience before that would have done him well. Or a couple of others, maybe too. Obviously, Charlie Musonda isn't going anywhere either, which why would he? He hasn't played in 2 years. Who would want him? So that makes no sense to me. And Tino Andrin, I guess, was the only other one where there was a bit of talk whether he might go out on loan. But that's just because we have no injuries right now. The second any of our wingers get injured again, that minute Tino Andrin will be involved. Hence why I think we didn't loan him out. So PYS, touch to get your thoughts involved on that as well. And if you after that want to leave while Lewis and myself round this out, you can do, of course, but of course you're very happy to stick around. So just give me your thoughts on the whole transfer deadline day, Billy Gilmour, Andrin, and whatever else.
Yeah, bro. First of all, I will stay, so that's sorted. I'm happy to stay. But yeah, in terms of Billy Gilmour, I'm a massive fan of him. I think he's very similar to who Tuchel had in Marco Verratti. They're both very small, both very, very good in the tackle. On the ball, they can drop between the centre backs, pick up the ball, play quickly. So I see a lot of similarities there, and I've said that before. I would like to see him start over Jorginho, just because I think Gilmour passes the ball quickly. And obviously, one of the points that Tuchel said is obviously Billy Gilmour may not be physically ready. Well, is Jorginho physically ready? Because like they're both very slim builds, they're both very skinny. So I actually think Gilmour is more well. Obviously, I think everyone will agree with me. He's more aggressive than Jorginho, especially in the tackle. So for me, I don't see a reason why Jorginho starts over Gilmour. But obviously, that's something to discuss in the future. It's only been 2 games, as you mentioned before. Obviously, Jorginho has been playing very well, so we need to give him props. We need to give him praise for this. So I think in the long term, I would like to see Billy start over Jorginho more than Jorginho starting over Billy. But yeah, I think Billy has a very, very big role to play, especially in this season with the rotation factor as well. So I think he can become one of Tuchel's favourite once he sees him play more, and once he sees him actually play in the Premier League, and obviously see that, you know, the physicality may be a little bit of an issue, but I don't think it's as big of an issue as some fans are making out. I really don't. I think he's an incredibly talented player. So yeah, I would like to see him get many minutes this season. And in terms of the loan thing, as I've said with you before, I wouldn't have minded him going out on loan, because maybe that's like a personal factor for him. He wants to get more game time and absolutely secure his spot for the Euros. But if he was to go out on the loan, and for me to sort of get behind it, it would have had to been a team that, you know, plays possession and would mean that Billy starts a lot. I don't want it to be like some other players that have gone out on loan and just not really fit and not really played much. It would have had to have been somewhere that suits his style of play. So yeah, anyway, I'm happy he's staying. Honestly, I think he should be playing quite regularly for us if we can obviously fit him in.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Obviously, and I do agree with Faldiaso here that Jorginho is better at distribution and controlling a game than Billy is, to some extent because of ability, but to the large to the majority of an extent, let's say, experience, and it plays a big factor in that kind of role. And physically, I don't think Jorginho is stronger than Billy. I think how Tuchel meant that is probably height, because Jorginho isn't massive, but he's still not far off 6 foot. I think it's like 5'10", maybe 5'9", which is a bit different to Billy's 5'5", 5'6". So that is a bit of a difference. Even if it's not strength, it's still a physical attribute that isn't to be totally underestimated in the midfield. Especially, yes, Verratti is like that in Liga, but for PSG, but it's not quite the same as the physicality we have in the Premier League. So, hey, at the end of the day, I hope Tuchel uses him, but I'm not here to tell our manager who's more physically ready for anything when he's there in training with them all the bloody time. So, Lewis, just as a last thing before we end this here, your thoughts on Billy Gilmour not going anywhere, and in general that we'll have nothing happening, because Vavana put in the chat the fact that apparently Emerson is close to John Juventus. I haven't seen that anywhere, so I don't think that's true.
Yeah, that'll be news to me if he's going to Juventus. Yeah, deadline day. This will probably rack up as one of the most boring transfer windows in our history, but yeah, it is what it is. Billy Gilmour, I was more for him going on loan until I went on our last live on Dami's channel, and they were talking about how, because we have like only one type of player that's similar to Jorginho's type of play, and already in Tuchel's system, we're seeing how important that sort of player is to his system. It makes sense to have two different players that can play the same sort of role. And Billy Gilmour offers that, and he should still be getting game time in this squad regularly. Obviously, nowhere near as much if he went on loan to another club. There's also more game time than we should be thinking, because we will still have these run of games where we have 3 games a week. If anything, I think we're in the middle of that run, and that's going to keep going to the end of February, if I'm correct.
At least, yeah.
Yeah,
if we go further in the Champions League and FA Cup, we'll go longer.
Exactly. So this notion that we've had, that I'm going to say I've had as well, so it's not me just throwing in directs at people, that Gilmour isn't going to get a lot of game time. We might be wrong on that, to be honest. I could see Gilmour getting a lot more game time than we originally thought he would. In Frank Lampard's system, yeah, definitely put him out on loan, because he barely would have got game time anyway compared to Jorginho, who wasn't starting. So that makes sense. I do still believe Gilmour's ceiling is levels higher than Jorginho's ceiling, regardless of how good Jorginho's form's been right now. But right now, also, Jorginho is totally unbenchable in the form that he's in right now. And it wouldn't make sense for him and for the harmony of himself and the players in the squad to do that either. So I wouldn't want to back that right now. But same way, keeping Jorginho and Gilmour, that's a good move for now. Next season, though, definitely you got to pick one or the other or loan them out. I need to see Gilmour getting more game time for at least a full season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I would agree with that. The feeling with Billy for sure, but he's only, 18, 19, something like that. So he's very young. We touched on this a number of times. We shouldn't burn these players out and play them all too much. So if Billy was like a starter and we didn't have like someone like him to play instead of him, then that wouldn't be great either. Because, we just absolutely need to wait and see what happens, especially with Kante coming back. What will Tuchel do with Kante here? Will we go to a midfield 3 ever? Because then we need even more midfielders, or not need more as in buying new ones, but as in can't get rid of any. So I think there's a lot of things to think about, and a lot of things that are exciting times ahead and exciting things to think about and see under Thomas Tuchel. Of course, we've got the Spurs game on Thursday night. We'll be doing a preview on here on Wednesday. Not sure who I'm going to do that with, but someone. So, that will be that. And we're going to leave it here. I really do appreciate every single one of you that has tuned in. Like I said already, smash the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Help me reach 10,000 subscribers. Won't happen overnight, but we have to get there slowly but surely. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Become a member if you fancy. There's a join button underneath the video. All that's explained, all that you need to know is explained there anyway. So just click that if you are interested. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to Carefree Lewis G. His link is down in the description below. Of course, just because he hit 20,000 subscribers already doesn't mean we want to stop here. We get him to 30, 50, and 100 one day, I'm telling you. So subscribe to him. And of course, check out PYS in the description as well. Big Twitter account, of course. And, we can't ever have too many followers, I think. So, go down below, so check him out. Some slightly controversial opinions, some good opinions. Not controversial in my opinion, but in other people's opinion mostly. Some outrageous things, some funny things. So you definitely won't regret it. Check that out. And I really appreciate both of you coming on. If you just want to have like a sentence to say goodbye, do that now. PYS, go first.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on, man. Really enjoyed it. Guys, if you haven't subscribed already to Laurenz, do that. Like the stream. It's been really fun, really chill. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. Definitely, we'll come back on if you want me to. It's been really good.
Definitely. Cheers, mate. And Lewis, yourself?
Yeah, guys, smash the like and subscribe button and get lost to 10K if you guys haven't done it already. Again, I'm not going to press the button, but just click the button, guys. It would be massively appreciated. Check out Pies on Twitter as well. We'll definitely get you on a stream on my channel as well. I've been meaning to branch out more, so we're definitely going to link you up again. But yeah, thanks for jumping on, guys. Big up, like and subscribe, all of that. You already know. Come on.
Exactly. Like I said already, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea. Let's just hope, things can be positive moving forward as well. And yeah, up to Chelsea, and I'll see you next time.